Reddit by Reddit recap. Teachers of Reddit, what was the best excuse for being late that turned out to be true? Student at uni was late for an 8 AM because the night before I slept in the hallway of one of our class buildings doing HW. We had sofas and desks around there, so it was a nice and quiet place to study. Also open 24/7. Woke up around 8:30 and ran to my class, which was one floor above the one I was. The professor excused me and told me I could skip his class because they saw me sleeping there and said something on the lines of, "At least you were doing your abandonment, so I'll let you go this time." Edit. Grammar. This is nice, but at the same time I would have been like, "You saw me and didn't wake me up? LOL. Yeah, I kind of felt that way, but at the same time it would have been weird and embarrassing to be woken up by a professor. Professor could have seen me at like 6 AM. Many of my profs, chemistry mostly, who had 8 AMs would roll into the building super early to get their labs set up for the day before teaching. Not me, but my program coordinator told the story at orientation. Girl was a really good student, always on time, studies like crazy, good grades, overall close to perfect student. Pass or fail exam comes and she's a no-show. They call her, text her, email her. 3 hours after the exam starts, she walks in with an IKEA catalog and the name and phone number of the manager written on it. She had been stuck inside of a broken down elevator at IKEA. She had no cell service in the elevator, so she couldn't call and explain. They let her start the exam in a separate room. I really do believe this story, but wouldn't it be hilarious if they were so brilliant that they just grabbed an IKEA catalog from their mail and wrote down the store phone number on it? Coming up with that whole story, the creativity alone would warrant being late emo. LOL. I totally agree. It's a relatively small city, about 1 million people, and was easily corroborated as a funny tidbit on the evening news about a group of 8 customers stuck in an elevator for 4.5 hours. 1 million people is a small city? I was a teacher, college, but my students were mostly good. Oddest excuse was someone was late to lab, and normally if you missed the opening slides presentation detailing today's experiment, you could not take the class that day. This was as much a safety concern as anything else. Once a student burst into the room just as I was finishing the slides, so they were technically okay. When prompted for a reason, they said they had lost track of time squirrel fishing. Considering they still had the stick, string, and nuts in hand, I let them go. Squirrel fishing is common on our campus as a form of stress relief. I have done it a few times as well. Wikipedia.org link. Thank you for this. I am officially going to get some use out of my fishing pole and try catching the blow-dried tree rats that are all over my front yard. My fiance is going to think I'm nuts. Let's hope you aren't nuts then, because otherwise those squirrels will take a big liking to you. Well, I'm diagnosed and medicated, so let's hope I catch a lot of squirrels. Okay, I'm not a teacher, but this kinda fits. So when I was in 8th grade, I stayed late to help clean up with my science teacher because I ain't no BCH. Anyways, I was a few minutes late to my next period, so my teacher told me to tell my next period teacher some wacky code phrase. I can't remember it for the life of me, but it was really weird. Maybe something like "she sells seashells on the seashore, IDK." But it took my teacher a moment to process what the yuck I just said, but she laughed and said, "You're excused. IDK, it kinda fits." Yeah, it fits the spirit of this AskReddit post. Too bad you forgot the words. That was the secret password for high schoolers all over USA to be late for class. As a high school teacher, if the secret code got out and was made public knowledge, there would be some severe consequences for OP listing them. Attempts at their life would be made, sadly. Do you not change the code weekly, amateurs? Had a guy who worked for me called in late because his pet python ate the dog next door. He was forced to kill the snake to retrieve the remains of the dog. Then he had to bury his snake. That is absolutely wild, though very sad. Jesus. Frowning face. Everybody had a bad day that day. Had a student asked to leave class once the test was finished because his lung had collapsed a couple days earlier and he was still recovering. He then pulled up his shirt to show me the valve they had inserted. I told him he didn't have to take the test, but he had already studied for it and wanted to get it over with. I also had a student ask to leave after the test because her husband had died the previous day and she had to make arrangements. Insisted on taking the test. My students are hardcore. My first year of teaching. Had a senior who showed up to the first day of class pregnant. Passed my class and graduated, though she was on maternity leave from spring break until the last week of school. Had a student whose mom had a stroke in February. Dad didn't speak English, so this girl had to handle everything with the hospital, and eventually, with the funeral home. This girl passed. Edit. My class had a student whose brother had a stroke during spring semester. She missed a week of class, then finished my class with a high A. Had a student whose father had a massive heart attack, wholly unexpectedly, in April. He missed a day or two of class and finished with an A. Probably a few other incidents that I'm forgetting. All this to say that when a student conveniently was absent for 3 consecutive tests in my class, then cheated on all 3 of them when he was making them up, I had no sympathy whatsoever. People handle grief differently. Some people throw themselves into school and work BC, it's all they have left to control. Some people completely dissolve and fall apart. BC, it's all they have left to control. I lost both of my parents in a short period and this is what I did. I've always thought it was to forget, but when you said control it all makes sense now. Never thought about it that way. University. I had a teacher who was very late one day because of what he called car troubles and a bit of a bad day. Some days later he told us that what actually happened was that 2 guys on a bike cut him off at a traffic light. It slashed his tires, pointed a gun at him and yelled out his name before speeding off. Meanwhile, another group broke into his house, roughed everything up, took his hard drive and set fire to his computer. My teacher is a journalist who was writing a book about corrupt army officials and their links to narco paramilitary groups in Colombia. That was meant as a soft warning to shut up. He seemed off in class, but I can't believe he actually taught us that day and didn't seem nearly as shocked as you would expect from something like that. What country was this in? The book was about Colombia, so definitely in Uruguay. Not a teacher, but I think you'll enjoy this. He hit a pig. Yes, the animal. He hit the feral pig with so much force with his car it bounced across his hood and came through his windshield. He arrived late to work, again. This time by taxi, so I behind him he's got some stupid excuse about car troubles. I get ready to dig into him for being late for the 3rd time in 2 weeks and he walks in white as a sheet and small patches of blood on his white collared shirt. The dude had photos of the pig lodged in his windshield. I gave him a pass and told him to go home and take care of it. When my boss asked where he was, I told him the story and showed him the photos. When you're late for work and can call in a favor with your buddy at the hog farm, you can't just say that, man. I was getting so excited for a guy who fist fought a pig, but no, it was his car. God damn it. Don't think you win a fist fight against a pig. Mom's ex has serious mental issues and terrorized us all night by pounding on the doors and windows as he texted her profusely, using our Wi-Fi until I chased him away with a baseball bat, and we both overslept. That one got me a chance to retake the test I missed in first period, but the truth is that happened a week prior to me being late, and on a weekend. My mom's just a real G and backed up my story that it was the night before. Regardless of when it happened, I'm sorry you had to go through that kind of terror. I hope you're both doing better and are free of the jerk. My dad was a teacher in a school that is also used for filming a British TV soap opera. He would regularly be told that students were late due to having to do several takes. They would just walk around in the background of scenes. A few weeks later you'd see them on the TV. Which show? Coronation Street. The school is called Weatherfield High in the show, but when Dad was there it was called Hope High School in reality. First 6 letters terrify me. I was already running late and was hit by a car outside my class. The professor saw it through the window. I still went to class and she was cool about it, since I was hit by a car. Once, my dad came early from work. Him and my mom decided to surprise me by coming to pick me up at school. On the way there, they see a large group of people at a pedestrian crossing, and an ambulance. Then they see me lying on the ground. I had just been hit by a car. It turned out I was fine. Nothing broken. Only knocked out with a huge contusion to my face from hitting the curb. But I gave them a serious scare, and had a huge blackie on the class photo. The next week. As a mom, this is something I hope to never see. I was driving home from my internship when I was 18 on my scooter. A car didn't see me and crossed the street right in front of me. I slipped, broke my foot and arm. So I'm sitting there in the middle of the crossroad when all of a sudden I see a woman running. Turns out my mom was 3 cars behind me. Not a teacher, but a high school kid left class for the bathroom and came back like 20 minutes later. Obviously the teacher thought he was skipping class, so they asked them why they took so long to use the bathroom. And the kid said that ran out of toilet paper and had to use his sock instead. Sure enough, he was only wearing 1 sock. Normally I would think it was just a joke and they had some logical reason for only wearing 1 sock. But this kid was colossal dumbus. At least he didn't put the sock back on. I'd go take my ucking up dude. r/angry upvote. I have to. A soldier in an online class. He apologized for being late for turning in a paper. His reason: he was in a firefight the previous night. That was excused promptly. A student turned in a paper that was singed around the edges. His claim was he and his girl were getting romantic, and a candle lit his drapes on fire, and I guess he pretty much burned his whole side of the house down. Verified the story with news that night. Damn, he still managed to save the paper though. That's dedication. Did he save the girl though? Best comment of the day. I've been there with the life or death horse situation. Brother's mare colicked. Spent all night keeping her on 9/4 drips and sleeping on hay bales. Teacher asked for updates on the horse every day for like a week because I'd talked about my horses so much. She turned out okay. She's a tough little horse. More recently, a few years ago, my horse and I took a bad fall over the weekend and I came to history class late and with my arm in a sling. My teacher looked at me and just went, "Horses?" Both horse and I turned out fine. He was unharmed. I just took most in the impact at my shoulder. I loved that teacher, he's still a favorite. My nickname was Appaloosa.